This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, for those of you that have just joined us, just give us a minute here. We'll start in a few minutes, so go ahead and grab something to drink and we'll be here. Okay, for those of you that have joined us, just give us 1 minute and we're going to get started here, so hang tight. Okay, it's 7 o'clock, so I think we'll go ahead and get started. So, hello to everybody that's out there. I'm Derek. I'm one of the reference librarians at the Hudson Library Historical, so thanks for joining us tonight. We'd like to also thank our wondrous bookseller, the Learned Owl, for providing copies of this book here, To Boldly Go, which came out on October 4th. So in our chat window, you'll see a link. Click on it and purchase this wonderful book, as well as other ones by Mr. Shatner. So we're going to shake things up a little bit tonight. We are going to have Q&A right at the beginning. So don't be shy. Ask some questions. There'll be a Q&A button, and you can ask some questions to both of these wonderful gentlemen. So speaking of which, let's go ahead and introduce these wonderful gentlemen here. We have with us William Shatner and Joshua Brandon, and they're going to be answering questions about their newest book here, To Boldly Go. Mr. Shatner studied economics at McGill University, Faculty of Management, in Montreal, Quebec, where he graduated with a bachelor's degree. He's most well known for Star Trek as Captain T. Kirk, as we all know, but also he's been on shows as Boston Legal as Danny Crane, which he won 2 Emmys and a Golden Globe. Mr. Shatner has also written wonderful Star Trek novels, 9 of them, in fact, as well as the Tech War series in the 90s, and several nonfiction books, including Get a Life, Live Long, and ... What I Might Have Learned Along the Way, and Shatner's Rules. And he's coming from Los Angeles. Speaking of Los Angeles, we have here the co-author of the book, Joshua Brandon, who's originally from Australia, but living in Los Angeles. He's a producer, writer, whose credits include on CBS's Friend Me and Sci-Fi Haven, as well as Fox's Houdini and Doyle, and the upcoming feature film, 1,000 Little Cuts. So without further ado, we're going to turn it over to questions. I'll ask a few to get things started, and don't forget, on the Q&A, you can go ahead and ask some questions. So the first question is for you, Mr. Shatner. You've written, as I mentioned, numerous books. Why did you write this one here, To Boldly Go? What was sort of the idea behind it?
Well, I was playing around with the idea, the amorphous concept that that everything is in vibration and we're vibrating. And if you get with the vibration through the means of prayer or being aware or yoga, blowing the Tibetan pipes, in some manner you become connected with the universe, and there's this sense of entanglement. The key word is entanglement. And since we know that we're made of stardust, that we belong to the stars, and that everything on earth is made of the same thing and we're all connected, that connection is enormous and filled with all kinds of strange and interesting connections, from elephants and insects to trees giving off electrochemical signals. We're bound to our natural world. And using that as a springboard, I think the universe can take care of you if you're in conjunction with it. And by that, I use the musical stuff I've done over the past, some of which has been successful and some of which has not been. I went from not being successful many years ago to a grand succession a few months ago at the Kennedy Center, where I gave a concert, and it was a spectacular. And so that arc of failure to success is an example of how I think the universe is taking care of me. And the other part of that is what evolved from the concert, which is a television show and an album, is also going to be, there's also going to be a music video about a song that Robert Chernow and I wrote called So Fragile, So Blue. And my hope, my dream is that So Fragile, So Blue, which will be edited by an award-winning editor, will be the rallying cry for the destruction we're doing to the earth and our attempt to stop it. So Fragile, So Blue may very well fulfill this dream of it being we are the world to what can we do about global warming.
Okay, great. So this is a question for both of you gentlemen. So what was it like to write this book? What was the process? Did you obviously Zoom together? You know, how did this sort of come about? Can you kind of talk about
Why don't you take that one?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's so funny because so much of this book really is about picking up on connections that might just not be coincidences. And I knew Bill very tangentially. A friend of mine, one of my best friends, Jonathan Sadowski, was played Bill's son on a CBS show called Shit My Dad Says. And I had met Bill for 5 seconds backstage once. And then I met him for about 5 minutes when I was in the writer's room as a writer on a show called Haven. And Bill was our big guest star for the last 4 episodes of the show. So I had remembered and had a great experience then. And randomly, I reached out to Bill's assistant just on a wing and a prayer and said, I have an idea for a book for Mr. Shatner. Is anyone taking pictures? And I thought, I don't know if I'll ever hear back, but I've put it out into the universe and I won't die wondering. And I got an email that very day saying, Bill would like to call you tomorrow. So we have this phone call and I pitch Bill this book. It's all about, you know, it's all about triumphing over adversity and how Bill's career continues to expand, even though circumstances might have conspired to lay waste to it. And at the end of it, Bill says, I don't think I have any wisdom that I can pass on to anybody else. I can only tell you what's worked for me. And then he relayed to me a story about driving across a freeway in Canada and finding an apple orchard growing, and just the moment of picking an apple and everything that conspired for that moment to exist at a perfect space and time, for the apple to be at its perfect maturation point, the crack of the skin, the taste of the juice. And he said, that's what gets me through the day. And whether it's communing with my animals or exploring nature or reading voraciously, that's what my life is all about. That's what keeps me going. And so basically he wrote the premise of the book right there and then it just became a matter of, all right, how do we do this? How do we write it? And like you said, a lot of Zoom sessions and a lot of big themes. And then eventually here we are.
Okay, wonderful. So we have a question here that's asking, and I was going to ask this myself, somebody beat me the punch, but that's okay. Mr. Shatner, where do you get all this energy to do this? Everything that you've done in life. I mean, it's amazing. And also a follow-up question, if I may, what's on your bucket list? Do you have anything left that you want to do?
Well, the energy part is I've been lucky, and I'm in great health. Health is a huge factor, even when you're young. But as you get older and you're ill and you're in pain, the life force ebbs, and you don't feel much like doing anything, let alone getting out of bed. So I've been lucky in terms of my health and that energy. And then I've never stopped being curious. And so I'm always reading and looking at books that I might buy, and I've got them on my phone. And I just today bought a few books. So one book is Madness and the Lash. It's about the epic journey of Vancouver, of the guy Vancouver who What's Eating the Universe, Other Lands, prior to this history, the primitive history of the world. So I bought some more. Where are they? In any case, what I'm telling you is I'm constantly, our dogs, ourselves, the Forgotten 500, the story of men. Anyway, what I'm pointing out is I have in my hand the Library of England, and I access it all the time, and I'm reading all the time. And so these phenomenal ideas and phenomenal things that are real, let alone made up, attract my attention, so that I might read a book called The Mother Tree, and learn that not only, which I knew, that trees signal by pheromones, but they actually use the mycelium of the fungi to send electrochemical signals along to their saplings and other trees. Trees are communicating along what looks to me to be a dendrite, and using electrochemical signals, which we use in our brain. So what is a tree doing? A tree is sending a thought. There's a bug biting me, you better make your sap toxic. That abounds in nature everywhere, that miracle. And that, like, if you can explore that, and if you would amplify that to dealing with human beings, so that you might be thinking about somebody and they call and you think, wow, what a coincidence. But is it? Is it a coincidence, or is it your little electric towers giving off a signal? And since we know that something like a crystal, a slice of a crystal 10,000 miles away, will vibrate the instant you vibrate the mother crystal faster than the speed of light, that other crystal is vibrating. So there's something among so many things that we don't know about. There's something really weird about it, and there are forces surrounding us that are natural, that are part of the universe, that we have no idea about. So is everything not a coincidence, or is it just the mystery is there, and the ability to examine that mystery, to talk to people about that mystery, to write about the mystery, and that's what I think the book has a semblance about.
Okay, great. So you obviously went into space. So I'm going to ask you a question. Hopefully no one else has asked you. We went up there. We read about it in your book. What did you think going down? Did you think, oh my gosh, or was it just as nice going up as it was going down back to Earth?
Well, it wasn't nice going up. It was filled with trepidation and hesitation, and the last thing that the guy on the loudspeaker said was, "We're going to pull back the gantry. So if you want to get off, now's the time." That was a bit of a surprising announcement. And then we went up, and it was 7 Gs that felt like you were going to die, and then it was weightless. And then I had this profound experience up there where when I landed, I found myself weeping, and I didn't know why. And I realized I was in mourning for the earth. And that all has become fodder for this book.
Great. So one of the things I realized you were on, because I have cable, of course, is there's this TV show called The Unexplained on the History Channel.
Well,
So
it's
we
too
have a
bad you don't
question.
watch it. You should watch it. It's a really interesting show.
Oh,
The
yeah.
unexplained mysteries that abound. So if it's one thing to have a mystery, it's another thing when the mystery is inexplicable.
Okay. So somebody was actually asking, you're on Star Trek, obviously. Did any of that help prepare you for being on that show?
I I'll go back to what I said that Jesus, that I have hopefully cultivated the inner child, which remains curious. So not that Star Trek made me curious, or that doing a show called The Unexplained, which is on Netflix and on the History Channel. Not that that has made me curious, but it I'm investing myself in those shows because I am curious.
So it seems like you have kind of a motto in your book, if you will. It's why not? What could go wrong? So reading some of your events that you've done, like you've flown in a plane, you went up in space, been with sharks. So that's kind of it, right? You just think, well, why not? What's the worst could happen? Do you think maybe you could tell anybody to do that, or does it take a special person like you to just go and try something new?
I, I've been inculcated by a lifetime in movies where the actor goes up to the dangerous stunt, stops. I was in a place called Moses Lake with lots of sand dunes, and so that was the idea was it was going to be a motorcycle trick, and I ride motorcycles, so I goosed this motorcycle up to the lip of a sand dune and stopped, and then the stuntman got on, and he was going to jump this thing, and so we stopped, and then we started again when the stuntman was on, and up he flew in the air, and he landed badly, and he broke his back, and he's now a paraplegic. So that could have been me, but it wasn't me. It was the stuntman. The stuntman got hurt. I've never really been hurt on a gag, but plenty of stuntmen have not hurt themselves as seriously, but flesh is weak. So I got this weird thought that if something's going to happen, it's going to happen to the stuntman, not me. And I've luckily proven that to be so over the years.
So we have a question about Boston Legal, the TV series that you're on, of course, as you well know. How did you get involved in that? I'm sure somebody called you, but could you talk a little bit about being on that show?
You mean somebody called me? Is that what you're saying? I can't hear you.
You're on mute. Bill, I think he's asking how that all came together.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, David Kelly called me, the writer, producer, and we had breakfast at a hotel, and he was describing the series he was writing, character he wanted to have me play. And so we giggled and laughed, and then he said, the character may be senile. And I said with great aplomb, I can do that. And so it was born, and then it became part of another series, and I was on that show for 5 years, playing a guy that goes in and out of dreamland, and I found it very, very interesting, very touching at times.
Oh, great. So the thing that was on Star Trek, there's a lot of things that are becoming real, like, tricorders and phasers and things like that. But technology was becoming almost realistic, like, cell phones. We never had cell phones back then. But in Star Trek, you had all this technology that was considered science fiction. What do you think about that? Science is now actually becoming science fiction.
Well, no, it's the other way around. Science is catching up with science fiction because science fiction is written by so many scientists. They see something in a laboratory and their imagination, these scientists' imagination, which provokes them into making a theory. Somebody says, I think there's a black hole up there and it's sucking all the energy. And everybody says, what are you talking about, a black hole? And he said, well, and he marshals all his facts to prove his thesis. And that's science. So what else does a writer do? He has a one-line proposition of a story, and then marshals all his made up facts to supplant the story. But so many of these science fiction stories, and especially Star Trek, was written by guys who either were scientists or had a deep scientific knowledge, so that much of what we did was somewhere dimly in a laboratory in some university. Years later, I wrote a book called I'm Working on That. We had invited Stephen Hawking to come to the set, and he came to the set, and he was still able to talk then. And we showed him the engine room and pointed out where the dilithium crystals were. And he smiled and he said, I'm working on that. And that phrase, I'm working on that, became the title of another book that I co-wrote.
So speaking of Star Trek, do you think we should be going out and exploring space and maybe finding a planet to put, let's just say, human life on there? What would your viewpoint be?
Well, the question's not phrased too well because you can't go out and find a planet too far. But you could go out and find a Mars, or you could do what Jeff Bezos wants to do, which is to lift heavy industry, the polluting industry, into space and have it orbit around the Earth in geocentric orbit, so it's always there. And then people live up there and work in the polluting industries, but the pollution doesn't come to Earth, and Earth has a chance to recover. Everywhere where mankind has taken his footprint out of the Earth, in what's the name of the bay in around Philadelphia, and what's the name of the fecund bay that was all poisonous, got all the seafood out of? The right around Washington and Virginia and all that. You know where I mean? All right. Well, anyway, everywhere that mankind lifts his foot, and within an incredibly short period of time, in this case, the bay came back in 20 years, and where it was inedible, it produced foods that were inedible and poisonous. In 20 years, it had cleansed itself when there was no more traffic allowed in the bay. And that goes for everywhere. Marine sanctuaries suddenly become prolific with fish within 3-4 generations. It takes no time at all for the Earth to recover, where it can be itself, where nature takes over. Once we turned wolves into Yellowstone, all those deer and the elk that splashed around in the streams because they didn't have to go up to the high ground, and they destroyed the banks. The salmon didn't come up, the insects didn't come, the birds didn't come. They ruined the environment. And then they released wolves, and the cloven foot animals got the idea, oh my God, got a predator. They'd run up to the highland and get out of the water, which gave a chance for the brush to come back, and the insects, the birds and the fish, and all of a sudden Yellowstone is back normal within a very short period of time once we allowed nature to do its thing. And that's what we need to do to save the world. We need to get out of the way and let nature take over for a few years.
It was the Chesapeake Bay. We have our audience members telling us.
Chesapeake Bay is the
Yes.
one I want. That's it. I mean, Chesapeake Bay was the source of food for so many types of people, indigenous people and the settlers. And then we screwed it up, and then we left it, and it's good now. It's a miracle.
So I heard that you were on The Masked Singer. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Who told you that?
I don't know. People, maybe the internet.
I was on, see, this book that we're promoting made its debut yesterday, and its debut today or tomorrow in Canada. It is opening night, and we wanted to get as many people in the to buy the book as possible to appreciate the fact, to know that this wonderful book that's gotten great reviews exists. So I thought, they've asked me to be on The Masked Singer, and I'll bet you that's going to be a lot of publicity just around the time the book goes on the air, goes into the bookstores. I'm going to do it. Well, it was turned out to be the worst experience of my life. And they know it. They love it, that everybody says that's the worst experience of my life. I can't breathe. I can't see. I can't hear. We worked so hard on getting the number I sang was Putting on the Ritz. Putting on the Ritz. And it's got syncopation, and it's got a great lyric. And I worked hard with the music people, and then it did it, rehearsal, and I got applause. And when I put the mask on, I couldn't see the dancers, I couldn't hear the music, and I couldn't breathe. My carbon dioxide I was breathing out was coming back. It kind of made me panic. And finally it was over. When I got in contact with some friends of mine who are well known, and I said, I know you did The Masked Singer. What did you think? And they said to me, it was the worst experience of their life. And I said, I got it. I understand.
So we have a question to ask about as an actor. How do you prepare? And do you ever just completely blank a line and just go, I don't know what to do. Help me.
You talking about Masked Singer?
Oh, no, just in general. Just in general, as during your acting career.
Well, if you go blank in a film, they cut the film and you start again. If it's on stage, you're kind of screwed. There have been times when I did that, and adventures ensued. One vivid time in a theater, I sat down, I forgot what it was I was supposed to do. So I got up, I walked out the front door, I went over to the stage manager. I said, what do I do? And he says, you kiss the girl. And I walked back in, I sat back down, and I kissed the girl. And we went on from there. And later, when somebody was in the audience that I knew, I said, what did you think? I got up, and he said, we didn't even notice.
So it's at the very end of the book, a little bit of a spoiler, but you have I Want to Be a Tree. Can you kind of talk about that and where you got the idea for the lyrics for that song?
Where I got the idea for the lyrics was I Want to Be a Tree. That was where the idea came from. The concept of wanting to be a tree, I read that, instead of a headstone, you could be cremated, allow your nourishment to nourish a young tree, and that would be your headstone. And that appealed to me. So that's what I'm going to do. And then Rob Chernow and I sat down, we wrote a song, I Want to Be a Tree. And it's in this concert. Ben Folds, if you know that name, Ben Folds is the artistic director at Kennedy Center, and he and I did an album called something or other some years ago. What was it? And it was really a great album. And he called and said, how would you like to perform at Kennedy Center, and we had a lot of leftover songs from this album called Bill, which we all wrote, which got great reviews. It's at Spotify and other places like it. So Bill was this great experience. We had all these songs, and then we wrote a song called So Fragile, So Blue for this experience up in space, and it became the concert. And that Ben Folds had asked me to do. And as I told you, it went on from there.
So we have a question that's asking, as an actor, what's your most challenging role, if you could remember, and what was your most favorite role to be during your career?
My mind doesn't work like that, and like today, talking to you is the best thing I've ever done, and that's my feeling.
Okay, so I read in your book you have what's called StoryFile, which is a 3D talking monogram program that you're going to do for the future. How's that going? Recording your
I
whatever you
did
want to.
recording whatever you want to call it. Is that what you said? Yeah, artificial intelligence. Yeah. So a guy contacts me and says, we've been filming Holocaust survivors in 3D, and we're making a sort of memorial of the last of the Holocaust survivors. But that technology will lend itself to a great many things, he said. And so I've started a company. I'd like you to join me. And so I talked to him, and it was really interesting. So I thought, I'll do it. So for 5 days, I sat in front of several cameras and an artificial intelligence sound gathering machine. And I answered questions like you're posing now to the best of my ability. So in effect, I fed an artificial intelligent robot with as much as I could in those 5 days. Now, the technology that this group has, StoryFile, is at the end of that time, when they edit it and put it together, you can press a button and ask it a question. So since it's all about me, and you want to ask it, what's your favorite color? What happened? Any of the questions you've been asking me, I think would fit into this program. So ideal, what it is would be a sort of picture taking device, the canopy. So you're isolated. You sit down, and a camera films you and me on the screen, and you ask the screen questions, the screen of me, what my answer is to your questions. So long after I'm dead, this thing will exist, and you can have me on your show back again and ask innumerable questions. So it's a great modern device for, if not perpetuity, at least a good length of time of being around. Imagine if you had Beethoven in that, or any of the great names to talk to. How we've missed that. So the intention is not to miss anything anymore. That's a StoryFile.
Okay, well, that sounds pretty neat. So we all know you have a love of horses and horseback riding. Do you do that every day, a week? Do you have a daily regimen? Where do you keep your horses?
Horses are kept at the trainer, Tom and Daphne Ferran, about 30, 40 miles from here. So I need the morning because it's usually hot here. So the earlier I can get out and ride a horse. The skill is that I'm in is called reining, REI, and or is it RIE? And what it isn't is RAI. It isn't that. Uh, so it's a very precise Olympic, measurable. The horses are Olympic athletes, and the riders have to be worthy of these great athletes who are trained every day to do to be a reigning horse. And so it's up to the rider to maximize, to seek out the horse's great talents and to maximize them. And that's what I do. So when there's a competition, I'm there several times a week. And this last week, I've been doing a lot of publicity for this book. So I haven't gotten out at all, and I miss it. And I won't be able to get out there Saturday, and Sunday they're closed, and Monday they're closed. So it'll be sometime late next week before I can get out to ride a horse. When I don't ride a horse, I'm that much less of a person.
So I guess you could say you're a bit of a Renaissance man. You've done a little bit of everything. You're an actor, writer, you've done some singing and things like that. Do you find it kind of easy to kind of navigate between all these things, or is it just life's unscripted? You just have to go with the flow.
Well, you have to script it somehow, somewhat. We're here from this hour to that hour, and that's scripted. And then these days have been very closely scripted to the 5 minutes. So I'm doing something that's really difficult. Josh and we're trying to be as spontaneous as possible about this wonderful book, that you should buy this book because it's entertaining. Basically, reading should be a joy. And I think this is a joyful thing, joyful activity. As for my life being scripted, there are things I have to do. And then when I don't have to do it, it's unscripted. And that's like everybody else's life. My free time is, I'm trying to, in vain, get as much free time as possible so that I can read and rest and talk.
So speaking of books, I'm a librarian, so I have to ask this. Do you read books on your iPhone? Or
I was talking about books too.
Oh, that's my favorite subject. But I always have to ask, and you've always said what you've read, which is fantastic. But do you like paper books, or do you like to read ebooks like on your phone?
No, well, I know the feeling of having a book in your hand and turning the page. That's invaluable for the reading experience. But when you're as busy as I am and traveling all the time, even carrying a book in your luggage is a problem, because you try to travel as light as possible. What could be lighter than ordering an ebook on something that you've seen and appeals to you? So yes, I'm buying a lot of ebooks with the knowledge that I do myself a disservice by not having the page in my hand, palpable reading, but it's all I can do.
So in your book, you kind of mentioned you're not really quite sure what your legacy is going to be. But what about Star Trek? Do you think there'll be a legacy on that? Are people going to want to go up in space and mirror you?
Define legacy.
You want to inspire people to be in space?
What?
Do you want to inspire people to be in space to become like you when you're on TV?
No. I don't want to inspire anybody to do anything. Legacy would probably be something you leave behind that people will notice. Oh, there was, or a, like a statue or a headstone or something. But I don't think you can leave a legacy. I think by the time you've made the statue, it's already crumbling, and within the space of time, the genuine eons of time, everything disappears. What doesn't disappear is good deeds. And so if you can help somebody and that reverberates, that'll last forever. But something concrete doesn't.
Okay. So I actually was surprised that you were originally from Quebec. Have you ever been back there to visit maybe where you went to school or where you grew up?
Yeah. I have two sisters living in Montreal, so I'm back there with some frequency.
So did you write this book during COVID, or did it take a couple years to write? How did this sort of come together?
Josh, I got to bring you in on this.
Yeah, of course. Certainly COVID, not that it's over, but it was certainly going at the time. I think early 2021 was when we started having discussions. So before the vaccine came out, but when we were sort of not completely in the throes of the original panic. And yeah, certainly it gave us the opportunity to talk much as we are now and to get all these big ideas out. And so it didn't take, I think we spent about 9 months writing the book altogether, and then you do revisions and you get notes from the publisher and all that sort of stuff. But, you know, it feels like it went by pretty quickly. At least I felt that way.
Me too. I enjoyed the process very much. We would talk on the phone or on Zoom or something like this, and we'd talk for 2-3 hours. I would try and find a story that I recollected or something that happened to me or something I might amplify. You know, Josh referred to this non-event of driving in Canada along a farm road, and there was an apple tree with the bough of the apples hanging down, and I stopped the car and I picked one Canadian Macintosh apple, and it was at precisely the right moment. It was crackling fresh, juicy, warm autumn day. The apple was rosy red. It was the perfect apple at the perfect time. And the sound of that apple cracking under my teeth, and I can hear that sound. I can feel the juices running down. I have an incredible sensual memory of that whole event because it was so perfect. And it struck me that remembering that moment with all its detail, that awareness we need to carry with us in everything we do. Carry that awareness that what you're saying, how you're breathing, what the smell is, what the look is, everything about the experience, and then you're in the throes of the universe.
Okay, well, this actually dovetails nicely into the question I'm going to ask both of you. This is for both of you. What do you think? Is there life out there? I mean, should there be? Could there be?
Life out in space, you talking about?
In space.
Well, Josh.
Gosh, I mean, mathematically, probably, but I always think of, I guess there's that theory that if advanced life existed, they either existed so long ago or are so far that they can't reach us, or they've looked at us and consider us not worthy of saying hello to. But what I always was fascinated by was in 2001, A Space Odyssey, that sequence at the end of the third act. And it's so weird. And I think either Stanley Kubrick or Arthur C. Clarke were asked conceptually about it. And the concept behind it was that if we were to encounter some other life form, that's how weird it would feel. Like we would have no way of processing it. Kind of like if you're in the womb, the moment you enter the world, you can't possibly have known conceptually what you're about to come into. So the cop-out answer is mathematically probably, and the truthful answer is I have no idea. But I'm thrilled by the question, just that it might be even a possibility. Certainly, I don't think they're going to look like guys with pig masks, the way they did in Star Trek.
Whereas I think there's no question that the passion of life is such. We see it on Earth. Every niche that can be filled is filled with life. Life has an imperative to it, and that's got to be I mean, slime can work itself out of a maze. Slime, let alone other, types of life. There's no question in my mind that there are billions of life forms out there. And if they exist in the Cinderella frame of not too hot, not too cold, then they are out there innumerable. Whether they use a carbon base or something else that's indigenous to their planet, that life form will have been there. Now, we are 5.8 billion years in the making. We are beginning to think, oh, we could get to Mars if we didn't get hit by a meteorite. Now, after 5 billion years, what would a civilization who's been around 10 billion years be doing? I think the distances are too far. The distance between each star is so enormous that there have been times in history where whole constellations pass through each other without touching each other. It's that kind of space. Given that enormous distance, I think it's going to be impossible for that life form to appear here in its life form. But there are many ways. We posit one in Star Trek, Beam Me Up. And we know that scientists have beamed one molecule from one post to another. They have been able to take a molecule here and electrically transfer it there. Or an atom, it's something. So they've taken something that exists here and beamed it over there. Probably an atom and not a molecule. Just our gut has more molecule, more bacteria than the stars. So the impossibility of beaming a human being from one place to another seems overwhelming, and yet we've been able to do it for, I guess, an atom. Why couldn't you do it for billions of atoms? So no, I think life abounds everywhere, striving to go forth. I think that we humans are still saddled with our reptilian brain, in which we were able to survive all the Holocaust of the ages of wind and rain and snow and fire and volcanic dust. So life has survived all that. And it's proof of how imperative life is. Life demands to be there. That's my thought.
Okay. Well, I know you gentlemen are very busy, so I'm going to say goodnight for tonight because I know you have another program to go. And I just wanted to thank you both for coming and taking time to talking about your newest book, Boldly Go. So thank you very much. I know you both have a busy schedule.
And just a quick note, obviously, Bill is significantly busier than I am, but if anybody did have any questions that I can answer, they're very welcome to hit me up on Twitter, and I'll be glad to share whatever insight I can.
That's a great idea. Great idea.
Okay.
All right, we must leave now.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming out again.
Thank you.
And thank you, everybody else. Good night.
Thank you, guys.
Hmm?